These are for education. We had GDOE Superintendent Jon Fernandez joining us in the KUAM News Zoom room. Also, we have our education reporter Isaiah Uggan. I think he's going to pop up. Good morning, John.
Good morning, guys.
Well, I guess we just started the first day back at school. I mean, full on face to face. No cohorts Monday. You've had, I guess, a couple days to kind of stretch your wings a little bit. So, what's the status report on just the first couple days of the return to face to face?
Well, first of all, yeah, Chris, you recognize that it is December. I mean, this year has been, kind of a blur. Yeah. Maybe just like last year has been. So, it is December. So, I hope that everybody, in the midst of all of the things that we're dealing with, will put themselves in the proper mindset and in appreciation of the holiday season coming, before us, and hopefully we'll have some, appreciate the time with family and all the blessings that we do have, despite all the challenges that we continue to face. It's been a rough year, and we started. We were very glad actually to be back in school, to have the kids back in school. We had a big debate over this last week, whether it should have been this week or in January, or phased in through January. But either way, we were pretty much committed to the fact that, as predicted, as we had been tracking the public health statistics, we were we got out of this high risk situation with regard to the COVID-19 transmission risk in late November, which really positioned us to begin bringing back students for 5 days of instruction. And so we had that discussion last week at the board meeting. The board ultimately elected to go with a November 29th start date. And so we're very grateful for the hard work of our administrators and our teachers and the bus drivers and the staff who had to pivot really quickly to try to make that happen. And of course, with Friday being a holiday, it was kind of a mixed blessing in terms of, I'm sure everybody wanted that extra day to take a deep breath and get ready for Monday. But of course, it shortened the opportunity to prepare for that sudden change in date. At the same time, as far as this week has gone, and we're not through the week yet, so this heavy weather really didn't do us any favors in returning to school on Monday. And I need to talk to Landon. I think he said it was going to be till Tuesday, but here we are on Wednesday. I woke up and I said, man, it's still here. But obviously during a normal school year, heavy rains present all sorts of challenges, much less with ours trying to get back, all of our kids back to school in one cohort, in one day. So that didn't do us any favors. So I think in the first couple of days, we definitely did see schools with traffic, outside, people, gratefully people driving slower, but, leading to congestion and delays in kids arriving to school. We still did see a lot of, a lot of parents dropping their kids versus opting for the buses. And then, of course, on the bus side, we know that our partners at DPW are, dealing with a shortage of bus drivers. So, them trying to make sure that they get our kids to school safely and as timely as possible, is definitely appreciated. So, so that's what I can say for the first couple of days in terms of the start of the school day. At the end of the school days, I think similar issues is really, when kids are dismissed, that's another issue we have to deal with in terms of the rush to get on the buses, the rush to get to the parents, and then getting the kids home on time. So, something we'll continue to monitor. We haven't seen anything out of the ordinary in terms of, the delays that you would normally see on a regular start of the school year. But again, that's something we're just going to have to stay on top of with DPW. Now, during the school day, we've heard a couple of, I've heard just anecdotally from different schools, and that's something that we're going to have to assess, this week and next. Obviously, there's been a lot of anxiety about the return to school for both cohorts. Despite what the data says, you still have people in the community saying, it's getting worse, it's not getting better. And, we have to continue to just provide information to our community to let them know we aren't where we were back in September at the peak of this Delta variant wave. So we're in a much better position. We still are insisting on a multi-layered approach to safety. A lot of the concerns we are getting from students, from families, whether it's at school or on the buses, is our ability to maintain physical distance with all the kids back on campus, and especially during the rains where they're not able to kind of spread out because a fear of getting wet during their break times. So that's one thing that we have to continue to watch. And then the second issue though is we're hearing a lot of on the plus side, a lot of kids are happy to see their friends back, happy to be back to some a more normal routine. And so that's that there's a plus and minus to this that we just have to continue to try to address. Definitely want our kids back, but we still have to maintain safety at all in all aspects of what we're doing as we get back to school. I was glad I had a series of emails from students from an Antolon 8th grade class. I think their teacher said, "This is your assignment. Email the superintendent. Use your student email address, use the superintendent's email, and let them know whether you like it or don't, and in terms of your return." And it was good. It was a mixed set of messages. A lot of the students were just appreciative of being back, but they still, of course, are aware of the safety issues, and they all promised to be safe and to try to improve things. But I just thank them for their candid, assessments, and I did appreciate hearing directly from the students. So hopefully we'll hear more from our students and our teachers, and we know that it's a big adjustment. We know that this first week there's still going to be a lot of concern, and people may still be upset about the final decision. And again, once that decision is made, we need to go forward and make it work as smoothly as possible. But we do hope that over time, if we can continue to demonstrate safety in the schools, that immediate shock of returning, to one cohort, we'll start to get used to it and get back into our routines, knowing that hopefully we're creating the new normal for our school system and our school year. So I'll go ahead and end there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Let's bring in Isaiah Huggin.
Good morning, Superintendent. I was wondering if we could get an update on the COVID-19 testing plan. Have you guys heard anything from Public Health?
Well, no, we haven't. I mean, we're having several discussions with Public Health, and so that's something that we are, still working on. Like I told my team, we can, I think they say, like, how do you eat the elephant? You got to start with, one part at a time. And this move to get everybody back to school, really was our big focus, and it was really something that everybody throughout the school system just had to focus on. And over the next couple of weeks, making sure that everybody's safe, everybody's, gets back into a regular routine. So that's really our focus. Our second immediate discussion with Public Health has to do with vaccinations of the 5 to 11-year-olds. So I just got off a conversation yesterday with Public Health, and of course, throughout this pandemic, we've worked to be good partners with Public Health, trying to find ways to facilitate the vaccination for all those who are eligible. So now that we're at the 5 to 11-year-olds, we're trying to figure out what ways in which we can add value to their efforts. At the same time, we're running a full, at full operations throughout the school week. So at this point, we're discussing, and when we get the details announced, we'll definitely put that out there. But we are discussing a weekend drive at 1 or 2 schools. I'm just going to let we'll finalize those details soon. But we're looking at a couple schools in the north in areas where there are concerns about access to vaccination. So we're going to try to work with the Public Health team on those details, and hopefully, either 1 or 2 weekends during December, we'll be able to offer that school-based support in areas of the island where concern about access is important. There is a sense of urgency from Public Health. Early on, we were talking about the vaccine not being available to 5 to 11-year-olds, and so the strategy there was to vaccinate all the adults around surrounding those kids. And I think the island has done a great job of doing that. The latest information I have is that the 12 and over population is at 92% fully vaccinated, and obviously the booster drive is what's next. And then from our standpoint, our employees, the last data I had was 94% of our employees are fully vaccinated, and the rest going through weekly testing. So that was the adult strategy. Now that the 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible, you know, my message to public health is, with 92% of the adults vaccinated, it would be my assumption that the parents of these children know when, where, and how to get the vaccines. So if there's any delay in, or any underperformance in the vaccination of these younger children, some of that might be the hesitancy, or the questions or concerns that parents might have about vaccinating their younger children. So we've definitely been asking public health and working with public health to take any information they can provide about the 5 to 11 vaccine, so we can begin pushing that out to our families, make sure that as part of this effort, we do an education and awareness drive for our families, because obviously they know how to get the vaccine, but if they're not rushing for the 5 to 11-year-olds, some of that might just be a need to answer questions, get more information, have a little bit more time to see how others are doing once now that the vaccine's rolling out. But definitely we want to support them on that. There has been some discussion about vaccination during the school hours, and so that's something that I think is going to take further discussion and thought. I believe something similar was done with the H1N1 virus on Guam before my time with DOE, but I want to look at that. But I do know that there are so many different details, concerns, and questions that we probably need to answer before we move in that direction. I know that there was a mandate for employees, but as far as I've heard, there hasn't been any discussion about mandating children in schools. So our effort really is to support public health in maximizing the 5 to 11-year-old vaccination. But I think we have to discuss it further if we are going to think about using school hours to vaccinate our kids. Our focus really is on returning to teaching and learning, maximizing instructional time, and then trying to recover the lost instructional time that our kids have had to endure for the past 18 months. I guess I didn't answer your question, Isaiah. Regarding student testing, that is still on the table, but as you can tell, it's not the top priority right now. Now that we're trying to settle into the 5 days of instruction routine and facilitate 5 to 11 vaccinations, which are public health's top priority. The student screening and testing we're still working on, but we're not prepared to announce a date to implement that and begin that process yet.
Any update on the 174 students who still, I guess, haven't been unaccounted for?
So I don't believe we have an update on that, except that now that we're back in school, and we're hoping that we're going to be looking at attendance rates and attendance numbers by the end of the week to see what the issues are, if there are any issues with attendance of kids coming back to school, and as part of that we'll see what we can do to update the numbers of those kids who have just not been in contact with the school. So we'll try to do that. Again, with regard to the return to school, I mentioned the heavy weather, I mentioned buses, I mentioned distancing, but attendance is another concern that we need to factor in, so that we can ensure that we have a good read on how many parents are not sending their kids to school, even though they are required to be there. So we'll have an update. We wanted to give the schools the full 5 days, because some parents may not send them the first day, but by Wednesday they feel more comfortable. So we wanted to take that into account. And then at the end of that, as part of that discussion, we still will be discussing with the governor's office what her position is going to be on the truancy aspect of it, because as you recall, she waived the truancy law in the executive order issued back in September that allowed us to return to in-person instruction. So those two issues we have to deal with in terms of ensuring that we have our parents and our children back in school as needed.
Now that the department is somewhat back to a normal school year, or they're having students attend classes 5 days a week, does GDOE have to make up any days? I heard there was a number thrown out, like 45 days that I guess students have to make up for classes.
So that's still a discussion that we have to have with the board. So there are a couple of things going on, right? Number one is, as I mentioned before, the strategy for learning recovery has to be, stop the learning loss first, right? Let's get back to school and get our kids back into, as safely as possible, get them back to 5 days of instruction. The second discussion is about recovering, the lost learning. And so we do have an active discussion. We will have a work session on the 7th with the curriculum committee on the board to discuss learning loss and learning recovery, in a holistic way. So we're not just talking about days, hours, and minutes. We're really looking at the big picture and what learning loss and learning recovery ought to look like, with our school system. So what I mean by that is that, yes, there will be discussion about extended time, whether that means extended day or adding on days to the school year. I do agree with the estimate that you're citing. It's about a quarter's worth of lost days this school year. So we have to figure out, how to make up for that lost learning. Now, my discussion with the board, though, is that it's not necessarily all about the hours and minutes. It's not necessarily a quantitative issue only. There are other ways to address learning recovery through other strategies. So what we want to do on the 7th is, of course, talk to the board about, the quantities lost, right? How many days have been lost due to the pandemic? The second issue is that we want to get a clearer picture on the partnership with the governor to push funds out into community organizations to work with youth as part of this youth engagement. I think that'll be a part of the equation to help support learning recovery. So what that means is that instead of just saying we're adding time to your class, to your normal school day, there are after-school programs, there are summer programs, there are weekend programs that can be a part of that strategy to engage students. And so we have a number of partnerships with the mayors, with nonprofit organizations. There's been funding allocated. I don't think the process is complete from what I've heard. I don't think the money's gone out to the organizations yet, but we want an update and we want to understand, the scope and breadth of those services so we can incorporate them into our planning for learning recovery. So, again, we may want to extend time during the school year, but we definitely want to take advantage of our partners in the community to provide our kids, whether it's opportunities to do public service or community service, whether it's opportunities to do internships, whether it's opportunities, to work on projects outside of school. Those are all the types of ways we can engage and get our students back into a learning mode without simply bearing all of that responsibility, on the shoulders of the same teachers, through the same methods that we might think about traditionally. Right. So that's what we're going to have December 7th. We'll make sure that you're welcome to join us at the work session, but we definitely know that discussion will lead us into determining the right strategy for addressing learning loss.
Yeah, John, I did see, and I don't know if it was the ARP document that had come out, but you're right. There's a lot of funds that are targeted for education that are under the control of the governor's office. So when you're talking about this, what you were just talking about, which was the grants that were issued out for nonprofits, and then I believe there's also some money there for the mayors and the after-school program.
That's the Education Stabilization Fund.
Right,
so
yes.
The GDOE got their own ESF funds, and then some of that went to. Right,
but the thing is, they announced that it was awarded in August, but it has not actually been awarded. And August, September, October, November. I mean, it's 5 months down the road, and we hear it's still at the AG's office.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, that it might still be at the AG's office. And so we do want to, connect and see what what the issue is, because, as we get back to, our new normal, back to school for all our kids, the next phase is going to be to engage those community providers. So some of them have already preliminarily, contacted us, but I don't think we're going to be able to do this on a, organization by organization basis. We need a big picture approach to understand how many requests we're going to get, to use facilities, to partner with schools and so forth. And so, we have a list that we want to just, make sure that we're able to engage with those organizations and make sure they're ready to go. So part of that definitely is, addressing any paperwork and legal, matters that need to take place in order for these organizations to get their resources.
Yeah,
we also have our resources on our side dedicated to learning recovery. Now, of course, a lot of that is really dedicated to just, getting more resources and materials and supplies for our kids to facilitate additional instructional time, and especially with using technology. So the effort with the board is really to focus in on the strategy, refine the strategy, make sure that everybody kind of agrees on how we're going to approach learning recovery. But I think we're there. I think this is the right time, for that discussion. Early on, when you guys have been asking me and everybody's been asking, my first response has been, well, I can't even get the kids back, to school on a regular basis. So I need to, we want to tackle that first. Now that we're here, I've told the board, let's come to an agreement on what learning recovery means and how we're going to approach that. So again, it could mean that it's additional instructional time. If that's the case, if it's additional time at the end of the school day, this year, next school year, if it's additional time over the summer, and we're going to need to discuss issues like, compensating teachers for that additional time, working with the union on those matters, depending on what the decision is to do that. But again, alternatively, working with our community organizations is going to be something that we're going to want to build around, because I think that's much needed as part of our strategy to get kids engaged outside of school. So we're looking forward to that discussion. And between now and January, we want to tie that up and make sure we're ready to go. So hopefully the second semester into the summer, those enhancements and expansion of programs can take place.
Are you aware of what criteria was in the application process? Because when I look at some of the awards, it was really hard for me to kind of see, okay, well, why did one group like NIHI, for example, get $600,000 versus another group which got, I don't think Island Girl Power got anything. So what,
right.
what was, are you privy to any of the details of the application process and how these award amounts were determined?
No, I do know that we did have staff who were assisting in reviewing the allowability of the projects as part of the use of federal dollars. So there was some assistance provided, but ultimately the dollar amounts and which organizations were approved were up to the governor. But I do want to say that there are, if there were applications, for instance, to continue doing what we were already doing, that might not have risen to the top of the list, because, we do want to make sure that the organizations are sustainable, that they're looking at expanding, services to more children and so forth. So I know there are several, types of criteria used to review those, those applications. We're gonna, again, for me, that was something that was in the governor's office. Yeah. We joined and supported that, but I'm going to ask for a refresh and an update so that we understand, again, can put together a comprehensive assessment of what services will be available to our students, so that these things are working in tandem and we're not duplicating or, stepping on each other's toes as we try to work together to address the needs of our youth. So we're looking forward to that. I think it's a positive thing, but yeah, I don't know who got awarded and denied and on what basis, right. But whoever does have resources, we welcome them to the table.
I wanted to ask John to follow up on whether or not you issued the ASPER report and also the school performance report cards, and if so, where can we view them?
Yeah, so I believe Michelle Franquez is sending them. I know we've got some requests from the reporter, so they should all be available. And I don't know if Isaiah received it yet, but I'll make sure that gets done today. And again, what I'm going to say is if I can extend that invitation to Isaiah, December 7th, we are going to be talking about what we know about learning loss in our school system, how we can continue to assess the impact of the pandemic, and then what we can do to offset those impacts. Now, with the ASPER, I think the challenge with the ASPER is that the results might be a snapshot of a certain, portion of the school system, but the participation and the number of kids tested were far different from what we would see in a normal year. So, again, this was only for the face-to-face students, and it wouldn't, it's not a similar pool that you might see in a normal school year. So a lot of states are dealing with that. It is a snapshot. It's one type of assessment that'll help us, move forward. But our teachers are going to know best as they get the kids back in the classroom, as they start to do their interim and formative assessments through the course of their day-to-day instruction. And we're really going to need to hear from our teachers with regard to getting a better measure of where our students are as part of coming up with the strategy. And the strategy is not just for the next semester. This a learning recovery strategy has to take into account that this has been an 18-month situation, and the recovery could take 2, maybe 3 years, depending on how we execute it. So it is going to merit additional discussion, and we have the time to do that. But I'm hoping that we can get to work next semester with kids back in school for 5 days and being able to then deploy the interventions needed and agreed upon to get them back on track.
I did have one more question, and that relates to sports. And I know that you,
Sure.
When we talked weeks back, you mentioned that you were having discussions with public health to perhaps clear up some of the confusion between outside leagues and the Interscholastic Sports
Right.
League. What applies to us, what doesn't apply to us, because it's not the same, and it is really confusing. And so, for GDOE, for the ESA League, what exactly is it? 12-year-olds? 12-year-olds, do you have to be vaccinated, or is
Right.
it still 16?
So as of today, the Interscholastic Sports under GDOE, the requirement is that all coaches, all officials be vaccinated, and all athletes 16 and above be fully vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. So of course, we understand where you're coming from, because I know the last guidance memos created some confusion for those who might not be following, the details and the specific language. So the way it's been structured is that there is guidance for scholastic activities, and then there's guidance for K-12 activities, including interscholastic sports. So the guidance there is separate, and so we're gonna need to continue to try to clarify and make sure there's no confusion. Now, again, the requirement to go down to the 12-year-olds for vaccination requirements, that's something that we have to discuss and hear more about. But at this point, we were comfortable with the 16 and above. Our focus was really on spectators coming in, to the games, because we do have control, and there's a limited amount of spectators who are allowed in. But it really is based on capacity of your gyms or your facilities. So I think the theory behind the spectators is to lower the numbers and keep them distanced, during the games. But there has been some discussion about whether the vaccination requirements should apply to the adults in an effort to get more spectators to the sport to be able to participate. So that discussion is ongoing. But I know that we've got a lot of schools asking whether we can do more so that more parents and family members can join and watch their kids, perform in their athletic events.
Do you still?
So more work is needed to align those guidance.
Do you feel that they should be aligned, whether it's an outside league or interscholastic sports? the
Well,
guidelines?
There should be. I think there should be discussion and alignment. But I think the practical matter is the kids who are in schools are also participating in outside leagues. So there's not like a separate group of kids necessarily. So some of the kids, the athletes are doing both, right? The coaches are doing both. And so I think that's where it gets confusing when they're trying to figure out which requirements they have to meet. So for a student, we're saying if you're 16 and above, you have to get vaccinated or test. And then if you're under the 16, you don't, unless you're in an outside league, and then you have to follow their rules. So I think that's where the parents are coming from, trying to figure out what they need to do to ensure their kids have an opportunity to participate.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was data or science that said, well, if you go to school and you play sports, you're more likely to get, or you play out in an outside league, you're more likely to get COVID.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, I haven't seen any difference, any science.
I'm just messing with you, John.
No, I know.
He's a big
no,
messer.
you're absolutely right. No, but I think that is the thing. We do want to be driven by data. And so I'm very, that's something that is on my mind, is that because there's so many things we can do to make ourselves feel better. But what is the science telling us? What is data showing us? Because, we're never going to stop, if we don't use science and the data to kind of guide us. And there's enough uncertainty out there that we need to, definitely need to be monitoring. But, debates about whether outside leagues are safer than, or more dangerous than interscholastic leagues, that's definitely not something I've ever, I think is probably worth our discussion. We need to talk about, the bigger issues out there.
Yeah. And before we let you go, there is a question here, just so that it's on your radar. Parents are still waiting for the laptops for our children to be on the online schooling. It's already December, half of the semester is about done, and yet our children haven't gotten their laptops and the Wi-Fi monitors yet. Just letting you know
Yeah.
that.
If you could text me if there's a particular school, then that'll be helpful.
Okay.
But we know that we've got a lot of laptops in. Luckily, I mean, we're grateful because of the shipping delays. Every time we get something, we're saying, great, let's get them out to the school. So if there is a particular student or school, we can definitely work that out and make sure that that's addressed.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Isaiah.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
right.
See you
Thank
later.
you. All right. We'll take a quick break, and we're coming back with more of the show next, right here on The Link. Good morning.
Uno Mixed. We're mixing it up on the last Thursday of every month with a look at lifestyle, entertainment, food, and so much more on the stations, networks, and digital platforms of KUAM Communications.
Uno Mixed is presented to you by Docomo Pacific. Better together.